Quelqu'un personne qui parle français? No. Good afternoon. If I could have everybody take a seat and we will begin. It's 3 p.m. according to the clock behind me in 33 seconds. So thank you all very much for coming out here this afternoon. I'm Robin Gomez, the Madera Beach City Manager. So does anybody know what a city manager does other than those that work here or are elected officials? That's the best answer I've heard so far, everything. Well, we try everything. I think as most of you are aware, the city manager is the appointed sort of CEO of the organization, which is the city of Madera Beach. So that person, myself, and I'm very thankful and grateful to be here because I love everything about Madera Beach, is where we oversee the day-to-day operations of the city. So public works, our recreation programs, our beautification, cleaning, road, streets, et cetera, everything that we do. We contract for quite a bit of services as well, as I think many of you are aware, including sheriffs, including our attorneys, our information technology, our engineering services, just to name a few. We have about a total of about 77 bodies right now, about 75 full-time equivalent positions in the city. This year, our budget for the current year, total citywide budget is about $25 million. Tomorrow, if any of you really like your local government, you're invited to come back right to this room at 4 p.m. where we will have essentially one of our final budget work sessions to discuss the budget for next year. Does anybody know when our year begins? October 1, that is correct. So September 30th, we're having a huge party, countdown to the end of fiscal 22 and then beginning fiscal 23, another new year. But tomorrow at 4 o'clock is when we have our next budget workshop. You're all welcome to attend, followed by a commission workshop beginning at 6 o'clock if you really love your government that much more and come in and watch and listen and participate in your government. We are here, obviously, as you're aware, to provide government services. Some of our staff is back here, our department heads, and actually most of our elected officials are here as well. So we are here to provide services to all of you. The priority being with our residents, obviously. We provide services to our businesses. And then, of course, we're expecting probably close to 2 million people to visit Madera Beach. That's an awful lot of people. Where do they all fit? How do we make everything work? And ensure that, again, the priority of what we do is provide the most efficient, effective government services to all of you, our residents, those that are business owners, and certainly the hundreds of thousands or a couple of million that are here to visit. So again, I'm Robin Gomez, the Madera Beach City Manager. I think I know most of you here. This forum or town hall meeting or conversations with the city are really to let us know what is happening out there that we may not know. Let us know what we can do better. If you have a concern, an issue, please bring it up. We also do welcome compliments. They are very far and few between, but those are always welcome and certainly greatly appreciated. But of course, we're here because there are about 78 bodies in the city. We can't be everywhere every time, so that's why these types of meetings, interactions are extremely important. So I will start. As I said, some of our elected officials are the mayor, John Hendricks, Commissioners Ray Kerr and Commissioners David Tagliarini, and just so everybody's aware. And then from our city staff, Patrick Cade in finance, Frank DeSantis, our building official, Al Carrier, our engineering firm that we contract with, formerly known as Duell and Associates, Megan Wepfer, our public works director, Brian Crabtree, our marine supervisor, Jenny Rowan, our senior planner, and Jay Hatch, our recreation director. Those are the city staff that are here, and I know my assistant was here, Megan Powers. I think she went back and forth. Wanted to start with a couple, just to go over quickly a few projects. The one that is probably the most visible on Gulf Boulevard, right, essentially in between the Bank of America and the car wash, water bubbling up through the ground. We received plans and information from the Florida Department of Transportation that they're going to be digging that up and figuring out what is causing it. Pinellas County Utilities did not find an issue with either the water lines that run crisscross and run parallel on Gulf Boulevard, as well as the sewer line, as well as I believe there's a reclaimed main that goes down Gulf Boulevard. So I believe most of you are aware, Gulf Boulevard and 150th, the Tom Stewart Causeway, are Florida Department of Transportation roads, state roads. They are maintained by the state. We have one agreement with the state. We have 3 agreements with the state where I was referring to the Tom Stewart Causeway for maintenance of some of the landscaping. But in terms of responding to issues with sidewalks, issues with storm drains on those 2 main roads, that is the responsibility of the Florida Department of Transportation. Pinellas County maintains the crosswalks and all the signalized intersections. Is that right, Megan? Along Gulf Boulevard and the Tom Stewart Causeway. They actually maintain all of the signalized intersections in our city. So that meant we also contract with the state and with the county for a variety of different services and a variety of different state agencies, in addition to DOT, also the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, for example, regarding marine activities and different functions that we provide. So we don't have a date yet from the Florida Department of Transportation as to when that will begin, but there will be there'll be lots of maintenance of traffic signs and signals and some detours or temporary lane closures while they work on that. We've tried, and I reminded them when I spoke yesterday with some DOT representatives if they could do it not during the peak hours of the day or certainly on the weekends, and have that road open and accessible throughout the weekend. Yes. Do you have regular communication between the state or do they? Nope. It's pretty regular communication because of a lot of work that is happening. So they notify us, give us quite a little bit of advance notice when something is going to happen, such as the repair work that's being done on the bridge between us and Treasure Island. They're installing new lights. Normally they give us enough advance notice, but sometimes, hey, we'll be out there next week. And this is what we're going to be doing. They've been doing some stormwater work along Gulf Boulevard at the Village, right next to the bridge where there's one DOT outfall. So we do, and I've been communicating more with the office here on Ulmerton Road regarding a variety of projects, from additional signage at Johns Pass to the dredging that hopefully will be done later this year. So just communicating with them is important that we do that because of the importance of, obviously, Gulf Boulevard and the causeway and the bridge. Even the discussions regarding the drawbridge because we've had some boaters express a concern that whoever was working at the bridge was apparently not operating, I guess, efficiently. I don't know if they had to wait for the bridge to go up. I haven't observed that, and I haven't heard anybody say that, but apparently that was a concern that was brought to the DOT last week, so they had one. The other, as we go through this, I mean, please, if you have questions, stop me at any time, and certainly the staff is here. Yes?
I just wanted to mention the water leak on Gulf Boulevard. From what I have understood for years is that is an artesian well that keeps coming up. They've tried to repair it a number of times, so
that's what.
Be another attempt from all I understand.
Apparently, I don't know the last time that Megan with the DOT dug that up, or maybe they haven't in a few years, but in 2017. So it's only been 5 years. So that'll be happening here soon. Other projects, I think of you are aware, our contractor completed the road repairs on 140th, Lillian, Crystal Drive. Unfortunate that we had to do that. Now we're working to recover roughly about $900,000 from Frontier Communications and their contractors and subcontractors. So we're working to recover that as soon as possible. Those were not planned projects, obviously. They were the result of just mistakes and damage done to our roadways. Planned projects that we have, because it was brought up a moment ago, Gulf Lane will be milled and resurfaced, as well as from 131st to 135th, 130th to 135th, including the west side of Gulf Lane, so where we have our city parking lots. Hoping to have that started by November, December is the start time to complete that section. And once we progress through the rest of this year, other projects that have been in the works include the repairs and possibly installation of the beach groins. And we're looking to begin on the south side of the city and head north, but we're still waiting to get a lot of that. I think the rest of the information, and as a matter of fact, staff's meeting tomorrow, I think we have an update as to where we are. Eventually a parking garage that has been planned at 130th Avenue on the west side of Gulf Boulevard, because that's a city-owned lot. Recently, several residents have mentioned, and then I was curious, so I started asking some visitors on Village Boulevard as well. What if a garage? What's your thoughts if a garage was built in the village, and where that would be in the parking lot that is to the south of the Fantasy Planet building, and then attached to the Fantasy Planet building on the west side of Village Boulevard is the little ice cream shop. So that structure is owned by the city, that piece of property, and the city leases it to, I forget the name of the corporation, but Fantasy Planet is to operate it as a retail store and then the ice cream shop. So that's been communicated to me most in the 8 months that I've been here in the last couple of weeks. We have not had that in the time I've been here, have not had that discussion at a commission workshop or meeting, because we're hoping to have an update on where we are in the garage probably in October at a workshop. And so the main site has been at that parking lot on 130th on the west side of Gulf Boulevard. Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, I forgot there's a microphone right there.
Tom Edwards. I hope they can design the parking garages so that they're aesthetically pleasing. Instead of just looking like a typical parking garage, if they can do some things to make it a little bit more attractive. The one down by John's Pass doesn't look like a parking garage when you drive by. I mean, it's a little more appealing. And here you're going to have it on Gulf Boulevard to one of our entrances. So that's the only thing I'd had to say about that.
No, I completely agree. I appreciate that. Yes. Oh yeah, it's like an alley. I call it an alley. I knew I'd get that reply.
I worked with Al Carrier, and then I guess your predecessor, Evans, a couple of years ago, right, Al? And we looked at it and we walked the street, and we saw where the crown was raised higher than our driveways, and therefore causing a lot of flooding, right, coming off. So I'm glad to hear that. You've taken away my thunder of the speech I was going to make, but that's okay.
Sorry, no, go
No,
ahead.
it's okay. Okay. One of the questions I have is, hopefully you'll do it during the off seasons, because there's several of us that are on VRBO, and when we do rent our houses, where are people going to park, and how long is the project going to take?
We have a couple of parking lots that we will be making available, and of course, for residents, you won't have to do anything. We will give you the resident sticker.
Yeah, I have that.
If
now.
you have visitors, then we will provide the ability for visitors so that they can park in those
Great.
lots that would normally park either on your property but we'll make those accommodations. As far as the length of it, I think it's 2 months.
2 months?
4 months.
4-month project, okay. One of the things that we noticed, and Gulf Lane is used whenever Gulf Boulevard is backed up sometimes. We have stop signs on all the avenues. People are not observing the stop signs. I'm afraid there's going to be an accident at some point in time. I mean, even some of the commercial vehicles that service facilities there don't abide by the stop sign. So I would wish that someone from the Sheriff's Department will get involved and make them pay attention.
Well, and we'd also make some enhancements to the stop signs. We can put, again, the more visible that they can be as soon as you turn, so there'll be a reflector on the pole that we will add, and perhaps even, I think we can put larger stop signs, but that doesn't necessarily, but I mean, and also make sure that, and this is citywide, particularly in neighborhoods, and I would consider obviously Gulf
Right.
neighborhood in that area to ensure that the line of sight as you're turning is clear, so that landscaping is trimmed back and
Right.
just again to promote safety. Obviously, the number one thing that we practice in the city every day is ensure that all of our employees are safe. Obviously, we want everybody else to be safe, so anything, that's where we rely a lot on residents to let us know when there may be a hazard or anything like that, so
Great.
that'll be part of that project as well.
Thanks.
There's one other thing. There are no speed signs on Gulf Lane, and the ordinance specifically says 10 miles per hour. So when you're doing that project, putting some speed signs along Gulf Lane would be very helpful. And my understanding also is that you were going to do away with one of the parking spaces where it butts up next to the entrance to the walkway there, so that people can see that where the walkway is. With 5 cars there, it should only be 4 cars, so you open up that parking space. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, what we're going to do is add, and add a little bit of our plans of these projects as we get closer to that on our website. So they'll be visible and, folks can see what's actually happened. Yes.
Hi, Chelsea Nelson. I had a question about the parking garage that you're talking about. Is it going to be a resident garage because it's city-owned as well? Like, where we're going to be able to park there using our permits?
That's yet to be determined. I will tell you that the answer is probably no, but it's certainly something we can consider, and that would be really the commission to decide, because really the purpose is for
Right.
visitors primarily. Could we make some available? I don't know if that's been part of the discussion in the past. That is probably the third or the fourth most asked question that I've received is, can we have more resident spaces, particularly in some of the, specific or restricted, I should say, just to residents. I think you'll be able to probably use it during the day. That's what we have to determine, because it's
So
a little
couple
different than a
things.
lot. So.
Right, a couple things. I'd like it seen to be available for residents, whether or not we have our own dedicated spot or not. I just like to see it being available for residents. The other thing I'd like you to consider is, as you're saying, overnight parking. I would like the city to consider using those parking garages, at least the one on Gulf and perhaps the one in Johns Pass as well, for storm parking for residents as well. Like, when we get these storms, some of us are in low flood zones. We need to move our cars or they get flooded. It'd be really nice if those parking spots, which are city-owned, are available to residents to park there during special weather events.
Well, we currently don't own any garages, I think.
But you will.
But we will have one hopefully in the future. So, no, good suggestion. Yes, sir.
A little bit off topic, but I think it would apply in regards to timing. Living on, Gulf Lane area, what happens, a lot of the people coming off the beach, they'll come in to my yard, use my hoses, hose bibs, things along those lines. So since you're going to be tearing up the roads, I'm bringing this up just because it might be something you do beforehand. Is there any way that, the city would put something at the beach entrance or something along those lines so the visitors have something to use versus coming onto our property? And they go right through our gates, locked gates, so.
Well, definitely
Complain
more.
about it, just bringing it up.
No, good. I'm glad I spoke with one resident on 131st, and they made a similar comment last week about people going on and jumping over their fence. And we can't fix every single problem, but likely I'm a big proponent of as much signage as we can put up, as long as it doesn't look crazy. And if anybody's ever watched The Simpsons from like 20-some years ago, that's how Homer Simpson got started, as the safety. He got tired, there weren't enough signs, and then, anyway, if you ever watch TV shows. But so some sort of water station, a shower, in other words, type.
Foot wash, whatever.
Okay.
This way they're not coming on our property. I think that would alleviate it. But if it could be done, great. If it can't, it is what it is.
I feel like that would be a great addition, because most of our beach walks, except for the park areas.
Yeah, don't have a,
And we're also sadly in need of bicycle racks. you go down there and bikes are tied to palm trees, railings, everything, there's like a real shortage of bike racks in the city.
And particularly the access points. Do we even have one at John's Pass parking lot? There is one, but it's near the pavilion, I think. So it isn't as you're,
There's no bike racks in the city.
there's one underneath, there's one underneath the stairs, right? So it's not as visible and it's not it's not like a fancy, yeah, sure.
A lot of cities that have like, colorful shaped fish that are bike racks. I mean, we could do some.
Yeah. Well, and cities have started to colorfully paint storm drain covers, and with the message that, no trash down the drain or only rain down the drain. Also, your traffic control boxes at intersections, like the one at Dume and Tom Stewart Causeway, or just, public art and murals we have already several murals, but there's things that we can do to kind of aesthetically make it.
Utilitarian thing. And it's just so strange we have so few. Even in John's Pass Village, I think it's like 3 full.
There's a few in there, but.
I mean, that's not such a big, highly visited place.
The other relating to parking, the Johns Pass parking lot will also be milled and resurfaced and restriped and a little bit of a rearrangement. It will be a one-way, which is, so you'll be able to enter and then go to the right as opposed to go straight when you enter into that parking lot, similar to what we did. We will be making that change. We're going to have to make some sort of change because it's been almost cars colliding, et cetera. But that's at Archibald. It's a one-way with the stripes, and for the most part, people follow it. But that lot will be redone, and I think it's going to increase a couple of parking spaces. We'll talk about the one-way. The more I've stood out there, I think the need. Yes.
Well, while we're still on parking, we had an ordinance that said that parking along that area between 129th to 135th, you couldn't park from midnight to 6 a.m. in the morning. My understanding now is that we don't have any visitor parking where they get the permit from the city, but they can go ahead and feed the meter.
That's correct.
So are we allowing parking there between midnight and 6 in the morning?
In all, except for the Johns Pass parking lot.
Okay, because, we've had people park next to the residents, maybe if they're out there in the city lot, but next to the residents, I would encourage that we have the same restriction that we had before, no parking there from midnight to 6 in the morning. Plus, when we did have it, there was no signage, so the sheriff's office wouldn't enforce it unless there was some signage that said that.
So we used to not allow parking from midnight to 6 a.m.?
I have a copy of the ordinance here.
I think we need to change the
It's
ordinance.
it's in your parking, it's in your ordinance now.
We haven't, and I don't think it's been enforced for years.
And then you also have, it says that you're not supposed to have any vehicles longer than 18 feet there.
That's
Yet
correct.
we've had tractor trucks come up there that are 26 feet long.
Yeah, and I think they've been ticketed at least in the last 5 months.
And they used to want to park there so they could go stay at the motel and leave it running all night so their animals could stay in it. So,
Have we had any of those recently,
yes,
Jamal?
we have.
Yeah, let us know if you do. I haven't seen any. Right, if they arrive after 11 p.m. so we may need to add
Well,
enforcement
again,
then.
I don't think the deputies are writing parking tickets on the midnight shift, other than what's going on down at John's Pass, down the Village Park. But I don't see them writing parking tickets. You have very good traffic or parking enforcement. They've really stepped up and doing a good job on
But the
that.
deputies are writing tickets, as I haven't looked as
I
to
would be
when are they writing any late at night, Jamal, that you've noticed?
Right,
On 131st, 32nd,
Not-
33rd? Okay.
nothing.
We'll make sure that they start.
But again, like I said, is 12 to midnight going to apply or not?
If we're going to change that.
To,
Allow for the overnight parking in the lots.
well, in the lots would be fine, but next to the residential neighborhoods,
Are you referring to the streets?
I'm talking the
131st.
4 or 5 parking spaces that are
Right,
right
on
next
the
to
west
the
side of
access
Gulf Lane.
points. Correct. Gulf Lane. Yes, west of
So
Gulf
we've
Lane.
allowed overnight parking on the west side of Gulf Lane, correct? Or I
Yes,
guess we'll have to,
Yeah,
there are cars parked there.
frequently, we've had all kinds of issues. And of course, the kids park there and they take their alcohol on the beach and all that. So,
Cindy Edwards. Definitely we have parking problems. Down at our lot at 132nd, the handicap parking that's out furthest towards Gulf Boulevard, you can't even see the stripes there anymore. Now, they have 2 signs, but it's only a parking lot wide, and it just really, it's not ADA compliant. And I realize that in 6 months or 9 months, the problem will be fixed, but there's still a problem. The other problem that I'm seeing is we also have a lot of problems with people coming up using our water. One of the bigger issues is at our parking area, they have just let the sea grapes go. So what people do, what men and women do, they go in there into the sea grapes because part of it's open, and they go in there and urinate. Or they come back behind our house and they urinate. And, they're just too lazy to drive down to the public beach at Johns Pass and where there are restrooms. The problem, I think, could be helped out if they were to trim the sea grapes back. Now, I have pictures. There are other areas down at 129th where they keep, I think that's the road it was, sea grapes are kept low. But ours are just, what are they, 20 feet high? Probably 20 feet high. And they don't trim them. And now they're beginning to come over and encroach on our landscape. And we keep an open area there because it keeps the weeds from growing up. And fire protection too. That's right.
So do we trim, we trim some,
You pick and choose what you want to trim.
but
You
we need to
trim,
look at
you
it.
trim down here at City Hall. The trees, palm trees are all nice and trimmed. You trim over at Archibald Park. They're all nice and trimmed. Johns Pass, you keep it trimmed, the palm trees, but you don't go to any of the other parks along Gulf Lane. I have
we
the
will.
pictures. They're all of the trees are overgrown. So you just need to give some consideration there.
Will do.
Yeah, just with what she was saying, if you want, I got tons of videos of people, right out the back of my house, and I have little kids or whatever, and you see people urinating, pooping.
So that's up from 130th to 136th, all those access points?
Yeah, and it's just when it's overgrown, it gives them the ability.
Yeah,
I mean,
ability to hide.
I have one from like 2 weeks ago I could show you right here, and it happens all the time.
Got it.
That's what I was just talking about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, just to be clear, that was what they're doing because of overgrown sea grapes.
Got it. Right. Yeah, there's places to hide, right. So in our right of way, is that I guess we'd have to figure out where the, all right, we'll go out, take a look and trim them to help out. Go ahead.
Jack Klein, we're neighbors. I might suggest that somebody goes down to the parking lot. The way it's structured is that all the parking spaces line up perpendicular to the ocean, to the Gulf, you can't see the ramp because there is a parking space right in front of the ramp. And the signs are down about this low. And I'm been out there and people walk around and they don't know where the ramp is. And so they cut through the yards and there's no sign for beach access. So I just recommend that
Yeah,
you go
what
down there.
Yep.
Now, if it's
Yeah, I was there last night, walked
if
down Gulf
if it's a
Lane.
weird day and there's nobody parked there,
That's-
not a
You're not
problem.
gonna
You
see
can
it,
see the
but-
ramp. But I've had people come out of their car in the parking lot saying, how do we get to the beach? How do we get to the beach? This is right there. There's a ramp right behind those cars.
Yeah, it's the same person that parked in the middle of
Yeah.
the sidewalk and said, why did I get a parking ticket?
Yeah, right. So you could eliminate a parking space and then they would be
Yeah,
able
and
to
we
see
are,
it.
that, when they get redone, that was mentioned a little bit earlier,
Yeah.
that's gonna happen.
So, or put the sign up high. It says beach access.
Yeah, the signs will get improved and,
Only other question, 24-hour parking there, what are we trying to encourage?
just to allow enough visitor parking, but we can look to remove it from those side streets, as was mentioned,
Yeah.
and only use the lots. And I'm not even sure if we are using, I don't know if we were allowing it in the past, is where I'm getting at. I think people were just parking there without, and we didn't have the enforcement that we have now. So the key is the enforcement.
Yeah.
And we've been advertising where people could park, and it's been the lots plus essentially anywhere west of Gulf Lane. But we can look to restrict it from, I guess we would only allow it in the actual lots. So there's only the lot at 133rd on the east side, 130, yeah, there would only be 2 lots that we would allow overnight parking, because right now we do allow it on 131st, 132nd, 133rd, 134th, and all the way up to 136th.
The problem is people come off the beach late at night like that, drunk, they back up into the poles, they've hit Bob's vehicle as backing up, and so by not allowing them to park west of Gulf Lane there, it might, and as the poles bend over, they're tearing up your roadway there.
Well, we found, unfortunately, also a lot of properties that encroached onto the right-of-way, but some of that happened decades ago. And now we're at the point that as we improve those I guess they're not even really lots, they're simply on-street public parking that are now we're gonna have to do something to, and we've notified some of those property owners, you've encroached onto the right-of-way, some by as much as I think 6 feet, 6 or 7 feet, and they may have done that 40 years ago. Some did it a decade ago, some just a few years ago. That adds to it. But currently, I mean, what you're stating is for us to eliminate, well, not necessarily eliminate, just eliminate the overnight parking west of Gulf Lane.
Correct.
So I think you had,
I just wanted to mention, we had a problem around a few caddies with parking on the residential streets. And a lot of these issues may be resolved simply by, signs that are parking by residential permitted.
and that was one of the requests. Yeah. And that was a request I received last week from a resident on 131st, is can you make some of these residential? I think, well, she suggested all of them. I said, well, we'll look into it, whether we can make any. But any that we convert to residential, then we've sort of reduced for visitor. But either way, we'll look to, I mean, those are good suggestions. We'll take a look at them and see what we can do to eliminate them, if possible.
Well, the only other final thing has to do with dogs on the beach. So we have.
We
an
still
ord-
have dogs on the beach?
We have it, yeah, we have an ordinance, no
I see 'em.
animals on the beach, there's signs posted, and you still have people going down there, and I think we had mentioned that, sanitation or public works or someone driving along the beach and they see someone, if they could hand them something, say you can't have an animal on the beach and suggest they leave with the animal, you don't always have to call down a deputy, they may very well leave voluntarily, if not, they can call for a deputy. But likewise, all your rental areas along the beach, should have some type of
And we do,
placard,
yeah.
something they give their guests, don't take your dog down on the beach, and point out where the dog beach is. You can take it over here by Madeira Beach School and take the dog over there. But, you know, it will just put the people on notice, although the signs are going out to the walkways, the print's kind of small, but
So we do have notices. I mean, as I said, you'll see noticeably larger improved signs. You're going to start to see them at John's Pass along the waterway underneath the bridge out toward the sand, the wall and or the jetty out there. You'll see, and on the sand, we're going to add some throw rings of the posts that have the lifeguard throw ring if somebody's in distress, and you can, you know, hopefully save a life if that gets to that point. But there'll be a lot more signage, including signage everywhere that you mentioned at all these entry points. I mean, we have to do that to clear it. So we have, yeah. And last night when I was walking at Sunset, because I was on the phone with my wife, the deputy drove by. That was between 7:30 and about 8:15. So they were out there last night. You know, it was a nice evening. There were quite a few people out, but obviously not the same as on a Saturday or a Friday night or a Saturday, or certainly a couple of months ago or last month. But yeah, we've instructed the deputies to please ride out at sunset. That's when I've seen, and I haven't seen that many, but yes, people out with dogs, and but on that topic, I've also heard from quite a few residents who have asked, well, why do you not allow dogs on the beach? So my answer was because that's not a place for dogs, but I really don't know kind of logically or the reason behind it. I have a few people say, well, because they scare away birds. But the sea turtle nesting. So anyway, but we're not going to change that. I don't think there's been ever a request to change that to allow dogs on the beach. Although visitors will say, well, you're a dog-friendly city. Why can I not have? I think the dog-friendly is because there are restaurants you can take them. We have a dog park. We have and an area and a beach where they can go. It's just residents. So we will be also, and thanks to the mayor when he went to the Barrier Island Governmental Council meeting, City of Indian Rocks Beach has a magnet with all the kind of the do's and don'ts of the beach, essentially the city ordinances, and like no dogs allowed, no fires allowed. I did see a person grilling a couple months ago out right in front of the county park, and as my daughter was with, she goes, Dad, I think that guy has a grill, and you look over, yeah, he just turned it on, and she's like, well, you need to go over and tell him. I'm like, all right, I'll go. But the attendant that does the beach chairs there at the county park beat me to it, and he went over and said, hey, buddy, you can't have a fire here. But so that's the notices that we will provide to every single property on the sand. We will hope to have those sooner rather than later. We were waiting to see if we could get the no smoking, if it looks like it is going to be adopted by every city from St. Pete Beach to Clearwater, so there will be uniformity to not allow smoking on the sand. Interestingly enough, I haven't heard from any resident opposed to it, but that doesn't mean that they're obviously not out there, but I've probably heard from about 60 to 70 residents who said, that's a good idea. I'm going to infer, and actually only one or two said they used to smoke. None of them were active smokers. So I'm sure there are smokers who don't want that to happen.
I think that's a very good idea. I hope it'll include marijuana also, because we get a lot of people smoking that skunk weed, and it just chokes me up next to our house.
No smoking is no smoking.
That's right.
So it's all smoking. Yes. Yes.
I'm a teacher, I can speak loud. There are businesses down close to Gulf, or to John's Pass, sorry, that are using the residential streets for paid purposes. They're actually receiving money for people's cars. They're using their overflow as our streets. Are we allowed to stay and do anything? What is being done about it?
So what we will have to do is convert all of those streets into resident permit parking only. And then businesses cannot park there. But we're going to hear, that's a solution. Another one is we'll try to accommodate and find parking for the businesses. Well, that's almost very, very limited. So it's one or the other, and I think we're going to have to make a decision very soon whether we convert all of that, and primarily, I'm going to say from 100 and, so on the east side of Gulf Boulevard from 130th, probably all the way down to, realistically, all the way down to 150th, that we would not make everything resident permit parking only. And that solves that issue, but, you know, tomorrow or Thursday, there's a chamber event down the street at the West Events. And as I was sending my RSVP, and you're all invited to go to the event. I think it's a hospitality panel, and I think the Representative Cheney's going to be there, and Steve Hayes, I think, from the St. Pete, is that, yeah, the St. Pete Clearwater, Visit St. Pete Clearwater. And underneath there, valet parking. So I know the West Events has a lot, but when they get a very large event, they will valet out onto the street. And, well, they shouldn't be doing that. Okay. Sure. Yeah, gotcha. No, yeah, if you can't, yeah. Yep. That definitely poses a danger to driving. So that's a business that will be impacted if we go to that. We have to figure out, I mean, I think they've done, I know that they've spoken with the church, and I think the vet next to them and a few others, so that they can utilize some of their parking. I mean, those are the types of things that we have to do, but it's just, I mean, that solves that issue. So that entire area, and that's what the mayor said earlier, that's what happened at Caddy's, or across from Caddy's on Palm, from 140th down to, or 141st to pretty much 148th. Yes.
Doreen Moore. I'm here on behalf of the residents in, this is an informal, in my district up there, District 1, Bogaciega Avenue, Bogaciega Drive, talking about drainage. This was something that has been ongoing for a long, long time, and I reached out, Robin, to you and to staff, and also through Commissioner David, to try to arrange some sort of a meeting, because it was kind of site-specific for Bogaciega Avenue, Bogaciega Drive, and so this kind of culminated in this today. So I'm looking around and I'm seeing Mike, and I'm seeing, you know, Chelsea, you're on the corner, and Chase, and several others that are directly impacted. And so I took the opportunity to go back through my emails, and was really just kind of surprised to see that we started this in 2016. And Al was very helpful. We had some of those early meetings, and what this relates to are the formerly known as backflow valves, now called check valves, I guess, and the fact that we went through a real painful process in those years of 17 and 18 and 19, and I don't even, I've got my timeline, but I think they were finally installed in 19. But my question has been, and I know that there are some residents here that have sent emails with photos of the water in the streets, and Carl Pugh, who's not here, had also, because he's on the corner of 131st and Bogaciega. The point being that it's not rain events. It's not water coming over the seawall. It's the water coming up when you have a higher tide. The water's actually coming up the backflow valves or the check valves. And all of those emails show the sequence of pleading for a resolution based on equipment that seems to be working in other communities. I know Al has experience, whether it was Bel Air Beach or it was Reddington Beach or some of the others. The bottom line is they have to be maintained. And I know that the city has been involved with coming after we have rain and the debris, it gets on top of the drain surfaces. They come by and they clean that off, and they try to educate the residents about what debris does clog that up. Jeff, I found my email where I said, okay, you're the unofficial block captain on your street. We have new neighbors over there. We have people who've moved away. We have people who've died. So that's my plea, is where are we? What has the city done? What's Public Works doing? And before I put down the mic, I will say that since we started rattling cages over the last couple weeks, I did see that Public Works went out to the main source at the Coast Guard station, and I saw them there with waders on and possible clean out. But there were 7 of them, I believe, that were installed. So it just kind of, history repeats itself. What's the city doing? How often is it being done? What can we do to help mitigate? We're not going to stop the water when it comes over the seawall. I'm not being, that ignorant to, we're all in climate change. I know the water levels are changing, but if it's coming up through the valve, or when you have rain and it can't go anywhere because the valves aren't working properly, those are the 2 issues. So thank you, and I don't know if if the powers that be that are here, maybe they can jump in too. Thank you.
Nope, thank you for the comments. It sounds like, or Megan, if you want to, but obviously we need to clean out the pipes, the drains, and do that fairly regularly. Make sure that they're working properly. So that's really that's the quick answer. That's what needs to happen. If that's what they were doing the other day, then we'll need to be doing that pretty regularly. Yeah.
I don't want to be the one that has to keep nagging. I do have to do that enough.
Well, no, we would put it on a schedule so that the staff is out there to do it, whether that's every other week, every month. It sounds like it needs to happen at least monthly.
Hello. So I'm Megan, Public Works. This is Al. So everybody doesn't live in Boca Ciega here, but we do have WayPro valves. The way that these valves work is there is a rubber piece, and with that, it kind of, I don't know if burping is the proper, it burps, right? So the issue that we have in Boca Ciega where these valves are, and there's 6 in Boca Ciega, the 7th is on Pruitt, is that unfortunately around your loop, the area of concern, the debris that you all have gets in those valves and doesn't allow that valve to close. There's a rubber piece. So the rubber piece has to close on the bottom. If the debris, rocks, mulch is the biggest problem that we have out there. Tree debris, palm fronds are constantly in the roadway. I have pictures with me today. That's an issue. The valve can't close, therefore the water will come back up through that valve. And we cleaned all of the valves out last week. I have been monitoring those valves. We have not had any road flooding with those 3.25, 3.5s. It's going to come up through the drain. Water is going to find the path of least resistance. Unfortunately, if there's a pinhole, it's going to come through. But those valves are slowing the water down. Now, I don't know if you all have noticed, but my staff, I have some with me, they have been going around with orange tags to get the debris to stay out of the roadway, because with these heavy, heavy rain events, it all goes into the drain. If it goes into the drain, it goes down the drain, and it gets caught right there. And if there's not enough head pressure from the rain event, the valve's not going to open. And then that's whenever we get some backups. But if we get a 7-inch rain, it will open, and if it closes and there's debris there, it's not going to close. Water's going to come back up. So that's why we've been asking for help with keeping the curb clean, keeping your debris contained in your yard, keeping your yard debris when you're trimming your palm fronds out of the roadway, out of the curb line on your private property.
Perhaps, sorry to interject, but perhaps one thing that we'll look into is whether we have more frequent debris pickup. If that gets to be the issue, then that's what, and we need to do that sooner, more often, then we'll do that as well. Yeah. Hold on, go ahead.
I think you're right. Education for the property owners. Let's make sure we know what can and can't go in the street, which should go in the street. But is there a regular maintenance schedule for these?
We do those quarterly. Yes, we clean them after every rain event. We clean off the tops of the drains, which is debris that's carried from wherever. But as far as the valves go, oh, we're out every day cleaning the storm drains. I brought a few pictures with me of just some examples. Quarterly is what we should be doing the valves, yes. But I'm not
Seems-
gonna lie to you all. Has it been done properly? No. But will it moving forward? Yes,
Yeah,
and it
we'll take
has
care.
been for the last probably 4 months. Mhm. With the water coming up through the, right. Unfortunately, it's very low back there.
Yeah, so what Megan's really talking about is you'll get a small rain event, right? And it washes the debris into the drain. It blocks the rubber thing. So it may not rain for 2 or 3 days and you think everything's fine. Then you have a spring tide that comes in. And then it slowly comes back in through the,
With regard to that, I've often wondered, does the street sweepers help, or is it a hindrance, and do we really need them? I've often wondered, are they plugging up the drains with sand? 'Cause that seems to be what they're sweeping.
So we own our own street sweeper. It was actually just in Boca Ciega this week. I think he's been out yesterday and today. I'm not sure if he was out today, but he was out yesterday. It helps. So we have to sweep that pervious and we have to vacuum that or else it does not work properly. And that's one of the main issues why we purchased the street sweeper, because we contracted that service and they didn't have a vacuum. They just broomed it around, which doesn't help the roadway.
Yeah, but the street sweeper sweeps and
It
vacuums and sucks
Yes.
up stuff that's in the,
The pervious is done every other week. The whole city is done once a month. I'm sorry?
So,
Once a month. Once a month, we do the whole entire city.
so digressing from a minute from the drainage issue and the Boca Ciega and Boca Drive and Avenue, but the pervious surface, and again, I hate to be the elephant that never forgets, but as I say, when I went back and reread all of my emails, the issue with the pervious surface and the areas in District 1 that don't drain because of whether it was improperly installed or whether there's clay on the base and it shouldn't, there are streets, Boca Ciega Avenue and Drive were not replaced with it, thank you, with the pervious surface because
It's
there was
too
a
low.
clay base and
It
it
would
wasn't
come
going to
up.
perk anywhere. So they didn't replace it, they resurfaced it. But point being is that there was a lot of rumbling at the time that there were contractor defects and there were problems and should it have been done this way and were any of those ever addressed and did the city ever receive any compensation for that?
can you be more specific on what do you mean by not built correctly?
Well, I think we did, I don't know, David, is there anybody in the room that had background on that at the time? That there were some contractor issues, that they had to keep coming back out. There were cracks. There were some warranty items. There was some lack of, how do we get these puddles that don't go away?
So I have one of the water permits who was.
Yep.
And it works pretty well here. When I'm asked why the rest of the city wasn't, I thought I understood was that we didn't feel like it was working well, or that it needed to be cleaned regularly. So I guess what she's asking is, are they working? And if so, why aren't the rest of the city? And what are the plans moving forward with permits?
I'm not recommending that the city have it elsewhere. I think
So-
there's been enough problems.
So
and-
let's
and-
back up. So there were a couple cracks and a couple areas that spalded, and we did have Gerald Mims, Charger Enterprises, who put the pervious in. He did come back in probably a year ago and did a number of different point repairs. If that's what you're talking about, he did come back and fix those. To answer your question, the pervious pavement doesn't work everywhere. The soil underneath the ground has to be able to perk, has to be fairly sandy. Right, so if it's clay, then it doesn't make sense to spend all that extra money for the pervious, because it's not gonna function. I will say in Golf Lane, for instance, we are putting a portion of the roadway in with pervious because the road is so flat from one intersection to the other, there's no way to convey the water off the street. It's actually, it dips down 6 inches in the middle of the road between the two intersections. So the only way we can get that water off the street is to use pervious pavement. We're going to use that to convey the water to the intersections. But the rest of Golf Lane is going to be regular asphalt, inverted crown asphalt, so we can get the water off the people's properties. And let me follow up with Doreen's comment too, that it seems like some work all the time, some don't. To be honest with you, I don't know why. Some of them are problematic. We clean them. They work for a week or two, and then it's the same old ones that don't work over and over again.
You're talking about the pervious and the ponding areas?
No, I'm sorry, about the Waypro valves.
Okay,
The
that
valves.
was leading back to that discussion, was I know, again, in the whole series of emails, that there were warranty issues, and I think emails from different members of the staff that, they were going back and discussing that, and we had problems that the wrong side valves were put in, and I know that there were some sealant problems. Apparently those were addressed, but going forward, do we have a product that's going to perform, and are they still performing in the other cities?
To my knowledge, yeah, we do a lot of work.
No, the valves, the
the
Waypro was the company that installed it.
Yeah, the Waypro valves, the Wapro valves. We still do work in Bel Air Beach. They're still working. We did 2 projects for them when we put the Wapro valves in. They worked so well at the time. Lynn Reeves, the city manager, went ahead and ordered, I think, 6 or 7 more for the rest of the outfalls, and he had their public works guys put those on. They haven't seen any major issues. They have cleaning issues like we do. They have a little more head pressure on their system. Not much, maybe 6 inches to a foot, but that allows a little bit more water, a little greater velocity through the pipe to make that valve flap and self-clean. In other areas of the city where we have a little bit of more relief, as opposed to what you guys have on Bogosiega, the lobe, I'll call it, it's so low there. The grade elevation on a lot of those streets is like around 2. Whereas if the street's up at elevation 3, just that extra foot is enough to help self-clean that pipe. So, but going back to, we have a couple on Bogosiega Ave that have always been problematic, and they have been good. So.
There has been one that I think I've figured out what's going on, that somebody has been dumping in the inlet, but I think I've solved that. So if you have issues, Doreen, please call me, but I typically drive through Bogosiega at least 3 or 4 times a week. I was there this morning.
Say, with those of us, Chelsea on the corner and Jeff around the corner, is there something that you want from us as kind of like helping? Just send it to you directly, Megan? Is
Please,
that,
yes. If you guys can be my education on the street out there, I have pictures of the debris out in the roadway. We did. Sorry. Mm-hmm. I've been putting notices out, Chelsea, for a year now with the city manager's reports, with flyers on Facebook about where to put your debris, don't put it in the street. So I need to figure out a different way to educate, and my orange tags were my notice exactly to you, because if I send out a mailer at most places in Bogosiega on the inside, they're rentals. They don't go to the actual address, they go to the homeowner, which is out of state, and they don't care. So if you guys can help me and you see something, just call me. You have my cell phone. Doreen, I believe you have mine as well. I can give it to you. But if you see something, just let me know. And then if there's an area that you feel has issues, let me know. I'll come check it out personally myself. But my guys were literally just there last week with the valves and cleaning them, and then came back and reported something to me, and then we fixed it. And I believe ever since then, cleaning the barnacles has helped. If you guys feel differently, please let me know.
So we can always do the old-fashioned, go to every single property and just put a notice on the front door,
We can?
and on the side door, and on your car, and on your mailbox. Do that.
How is 137th Avenue Circle?
Never floods.
So we put the same product, the pervious pavement on 137th Avenue Circle, and there's probably, 8 or 10 houses on one side that are permanent residents and a few on the other. And I remember when we were doing that project, the residents would come out and they had detailed conversations with the contractor and our inspector at the time. And that was the time we took the opportunity to say, look, you got to keep your debris off of the roadway. Don't blow your grass clippings in the roadway. And that's really functioned very well. We had some hiccups during the construction period because of the timing of when we did it, but I don't think I haven't heard of a complaint out there about the roadway flooding or not draining, so.
Jeff Beggins, I live Bogosiega Drive, and I'm just thinking just differently for a second, because nobody here put those in, so we can't offend anybody. But to have a drain below sea level is the dumbest freaking thing I've ever heard in my life, right? It's just stupid. And our tides go high regularly, and it's gonna keep happening. So other places, just thinking outside the area, like if you take like a swale idea, this is some of them, I'm just trying to think about this. I've involved in a lot of habitat work too. And if you take the lowest point on the roads, which you either have or we could get pretty easily, and we took a little couple feet swath from the road to the top of the seawall, even if it's a little bit of slope, put some landscaping, some vegetation, it'll be a natural filter, which we have none of right now, so stuff just washes straight into the canals. But could you get some type of slope through some type of a grass that would serve as a natural filter, and we'd only flood when water came over the seawall? It's embarrassing to have salt water on a road during a high tide. It's not good. From a resident, a real estate perspective, and a city perspective, I'm just thinking outside the box. Is there another way to find the lowest points on the road and slope from there, even if it's just raise the pipe higher and maybe the pitch is a little bit different, but to have that pipe so low with that backflow just doesn't logically make sense. I'm not an engineer. I'm just thinking outside the box.
Well, it's kind of tough because the roadway, for instance, was 131st, that one corner. And the elevation there of the Great Inlet's like 1.93 feet. So every time we get a spring tide, if the valve's not working, it's coming up through it may be lapping at the top of the seawall cap, but it's coming up through the storm drain if the valve's not working. And that's what Doreen's talking about.
I was saying yeah, we're fine with that. That's the risk we take for living here. But I'm talking about getting rid of those backflow valves completely. Just think about it. If you did, I mean, you're never going to beat Mother Nature in pressure. It's just not going to
So
happen.
prior to installing those valves, what would happen was on a high tide, the road was completely covered. So even on these days where these valves are not working properly, it at least slows the water down enough that it doesn't cover the whole entire roadway. If we were to do that, we would be almost back to square
Where
one.
did the water come up from?
From
Just straight up.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, roadway totally covered. Yes. Mm-hmm.
To simplify it, it's just like if you're at the beach and you're 20 feet from the edge of the water and you start digging down into the sand. You get the water. The water table is the water table. And what people don't realize is whatever your house elevation or street elevation is, when the water gets above that elevation, you're going to get water. It just comes up through the ground. And that's one of the things I was so opposed to, the pervious pavement. I would bet that 137th has a high elevation. That's why they don't have water. Bogosiega, it's low. I mean, so if the inlets are at 2 feet and you get a tide of 2.5, you're going to have 6 inches over where that inlet is. It's just the water pressure. So there's nothing the city can really do, or engineers or anything. Well, sure, that's like if somebody said, on Bogosiega, tear down the houses, or on the Crystal Island, tear down those 4 houses and build up Flamingo.
have water back flowing in here at 2 feet, but you know somewhere else at 3 feet is fine, put a pump in.
So I have a stormwater station at 141st and North Bayshore, and on a high tide, on a storm event, 141st and North Bayshore will flood. So the stormwater station, even with the stormwater station, it doesn't make the road not flood because it's a very low area as well. It has 2 pumps that are brand new. And I'm replacing the generator in fiscal year '23. I could definitely show you the plans if you'd like. But I have pumps that run on power there, and then my generator is my backup. So I'm just saying that I'm doing maintenance on it in fiscal year '23.
One other thing I thought was interesting, the city of Melbourne Beach, I had a friend who lives over there, we were just talking about this one, and I don't know if you'd noticed it, you could research, they have a swale program that the city will go to your house, in front of your house next to the curb, and actually at the city expense will dig out a swale, kind of French drain, just kind of to percolate and collect water in the low spots, just as a place to help collect and absorb water. That was an interesting solution there. I'll send you a link to just to look at what they're doing.
I like that solution, and it works if the elevation of the lot is high enough.
Right.
But what happens is if you want to dig a swale down, you want to dig it down 6 or 8 inches, now you're just going to have saltwater tide coming up and inundating that area, right?
You gotta find the right spots for it, but it's, yeah. That's Melbourne Beach, they have seen.
Thank you. I had some serious flooding in my backyard that started 10 years ago, and my neighbors put in pools and hot tubs and pavers and blah, blah. So we tried a swale. It didn't hold up because of the terrain. We tried grading my yard to run the water off toward the street. It didn't help much. I actually installed a sump pump, but so far I haven't had to put it in because then I have to pay for the power for it to run periodically with the heavy rain. I mean, I had to put boots on to step off my back deck, fishing boots. So in my experience, the only solution is to disseminate a bunch of pumps wherever the water tends to collect, because I think that's the only way to get it to be permanently adjusted. I know it sounds like a big project, I'm sure it is, but I mean, I have my own experience with that, and the swales and trying to adjust the terrain is very short-term. It just didn't last.
Certainly something we can look into.
Because of what the, oh, thanks. On this woman's comment, 2 other residents asked me to ask a similar question regarding adjacent properties when they raising their grade and causing flooding onto the existing properties. What action can a resident take when those kind of things happen? I think that's a similar situation.
Well, that's actually illegal to do that, but can't do that.
So now in the planning, so probably 10 years ago, 9 years ago, the city in their code didn't have the ability to go after the developer for him to produce a survey with topography and develop a drainage plan as recently as 10 years ago. And we now do that. So when plans come in, people want to build a new house or raise a house or do a development, even a pool or raising a seawall, we require them to prepare a drainage plan that shows that that water that's running off their property is not going to go on to the adjacent properties, that has to go over the seawall or has to go to the street. And you're not allowed to, for instance, if the water on your property always drained over the seawall, all of it, you're not allowed to raise a seawall and make all the water come back to the street. You have to maintain the same drainage pattern that you had previously. So.
Well, you're still not allowed to convey your water onto someone else's property. You're going to have to, they're going to get a notice that they need to correct it. That's what you have to do. Even if you were allowed 20 years ago, you're not allowed today to do that. Just let us know. Yeah, we need the address. We'll go out, take a look at it, and then we'll send a letter to that property owner, you cannot convey your water onto your neighbor's property.
I was just going to thank you and your staff and the mayor and city commissioners being here and offering to hear from the residents. I don't have any.
Okay. Oh,
Other than to say thank you very much.
oh, you're welcome. Like I was gonna say, accolades are, yeah, we'll take one. Thank you.
Question for Al. Why do we use our streets as conduits for rainwater?
So what else do you want to use?
Why can't they, it's illegal to connect directly into the lines, the stormwater lines underneath the street. Flamingo, perfect example. You had four houses that could have been connected into the stormwater. Flamingo floods, it's brand new. We actually had a meeting on site with residents, with the prior city manager, asking for that seawall to be raised, and we're told we can't do that because neighbors have seawalls that are lower. That's crazy.
So the collection system in the street, the stormwater collection system, that's really your secondary system. That's for convenience. So when it rains and the water goes down the storm drain and out the outfalls between people's houses, that's your secondary conveyance. Your primary conveyance is your streets. When you have a storm event that exceeds the capacity of the stormwater collection system, then you use your streets to convey water, and then wherever there's an outfall, you try and keep the area between the houses open enough that the water will flow off the street and between the houses, not in through the houses.
It just doesn't make any sense. If there's any residential property or any property that's below the elevation of the street can never be raised.
So the issue with Flamingo, and I remember the conversation, those houses are lower. So from an engineering perspective, I had to keep the road lower than the properties.
That's my point.
So that those houses could drain over the seawall. Half the lots drain over the seawall. The other half drains to the streets, to Flamingo. The only other option would be to raise all those houses, knock them down and build
I disagree. They're all right there. You could, A, drained into the stormwater pipe, B, drained through their seawall. There was other options. Now, you know.
I disagree, because if you
Okay.
lower the storm
We
grade,
agree to disagree.
if you lower the storm grade, then you're going to have the same problem you have out at Bogus
So,
Yaga.
so
when you
you'll
have high-
so you'll always have an at-risk road for high tide.
Unless you want the city to go ahead and purchase those houses and raise them, and then you could raise the
While
road.
the street was open, they could have been tied into that stormwater lines. I know, that's my point. I think that is wrong. There should be at minimum exceptions, and the question's why not, and Jeff I believe we have the same point that you were talking about other areas. The engineer from Treasure Island did a presentation for the Big C 2 years ago, which was making this point. It just doesn't make sense that the roads are the primary conduit for the rainwater.
Maybe I'm missing your point. So if let's say the house is on Flamingo.
Yeah.
Where do you want those to drain? Where do you want those houses to drain? I don't understand.
All right. Interior lots, in my opinion, should tie directly into the storm line so that the
And they
roads
do.
can eventually be raised over time. Flamingo, let's just talk about Flamingo. We have 4 houses. They're all on the water. So I'm just saying that they could have been engineered to drain either into the stormwater drain or through the seawall. So that is always, that's a red road. That's a flagged road for sunny day.
But we don't
flooding.
have storm drain pipes on Flamingo. There's flumes. So it goes off the seawalls. There's no drainage pipes on Flamingo.
Right, I understand that.
So are you saying install pipes
I'm
on
saying that road could have been raised. I was told, no, it can't be raised because we have these 4 residents that their property is below, would be
there'd be a difference in elevation, a negative difference in elevation with those homes.
Yeah, you don't want to design a roadway higher than people's houses, because then the water's going to run off the streets and into people's houses.
Because you're using the road as the conduit for the rainwater. We have two, you have to separate and conquer. You have rainwater, and then you have the high tide, the salt water. I'm saying, okay, let's manage the rainwater in a different way. Let's not use the road as the conduit to drain the home.
So I'm all ears.
You know, you have
How do I do
you
that,
have
though?
you have the roof. That's 30% of the property, whatever it is, 25%.
Roof gutters, and you pipe
Right.
it out. Most
We
people do.
we get that piped out, all right? The pervious, the grass, that's going to have a certain amount of absorption itself. So you have some that's going to have to go. Do you put a drain through the seawall? If you had to do that, great. That's what I plan to do if I ever rebuild. It's just crazy to me, as we're going to be fighting this whole, rising sea levels forever, that we can never raise the roads because we are always going to have somebody's property below the elevation of where we'd like to put our roads.
So I understand what you're saying. So those 4 houses on Flamingo, we would have to go on private property and regrade those houses so that it all drains over the seawall. That would be
or through the. That's what I'm saying.
But the controlling elevation is still going to be the grade elevation to get the water off that property, right? So, yes, you could have done that. It would have taken authorization from those 4 homeowners to allow you to go back in there and tear up their yards and regrade it. But also, there's other houses on Flamingo. It's just not those 4. It's the other ones on the corners of
Right.
on Crystal.
And we asked if we could raise that street, use the flumes, have the seawall higher, and we were told, no, we can't do that because these 2 residences' seawalls are at the same level where we want to be. Now, no one went and had a conversation with either one of those residences to see what their plan was. Now they're both a foot above the brand-new city-owned seawall. Problem solved, and they...
Let's take Bay Point, for instance. Almost all the houses out there have been raised, and they've been raised in not along the short end. Almost all those houses have been raised, and the finished floor elevation of those houses are probably at least 2.5 to 3 feet higher than the roadway. Once all those houses are elevated, then you can have that conversation with those folks and say, look, we're willing to come in and raise the street 1.5 feet or 2 feet.
Okay.
Put in new.
I'm bringing up the point because we're in my mind, we're the primary conduit for rainwater is getting the water from the home into the street. So we're using that as a culvert, and I just think that that's a poor design for future. And I'll continue to think. No one's convinced me otherwise, but I don't want to take up all the time. Thank you.
As you were talking about this, the thing here is it gets into the idea of, say if you raise the road, raised it a foot and had an invert in the road, so none of the water in the road would go onto the property. However, now that road, the edge of the road is a foot higher than the house. But any other way that you're raising the edge of the road higher than the house. But one way or the other, if you raise the road, however you want to do it, the edge of that road is going to be higher than the house. You cannot, as a city, direct the water towards their house. Okay, the edge of the road, whatever end of the road is, that elevation is going to be higher than the house, and you cannot drain water towards the house. And this gets into the other issue of if somebody builds up their house that much, they're going to create all that water going to the neighbor. You'd be still directing the water the other way, I believe. And that's what I was just thinking. You could have raised the road a foot and had an invert, and every bit of water that rained and landed on the road would have stayed in the road. However, on the other side of the road, it's going to go towards the house. And you cannot drain water specifically towards somebody's property. So that's the only way that, raising it, what you could have done. And raising it, you could have had an invert, but you're still on the other side of the road going to be directing the water towards the house or towards their property. And the only, well, yeah, I mean, or if the road's higher than the seawall, you could have gotten it all the way down there, but you're still going to have some kind of drainage in front of the house to keep the water from going into the house.
Does the city have an ordinance on how much water has to be retained on property? So like, a normal standard is like, if you get 1 inch of rain, on any given rain event, that first inch has to be retained on the property. Whether you do it because you have some type of drainage ditch that actually hold the water and retain it, slows down the movement, what is the standard for the city? We have ISRs.
So the city does have two criteria, one's for water quality and one's for water quantity on commercial sites, not on multi-use families, not for residential houses. So the city, for water quality, you have to retain 1 inch over all of the impervious area on the property. And then the water quality aspect is actually pretty strict. They make you go back to raw land, the way the property was before it was developed.
So why, I mean, you can't drain all the water that comes in, because 1 acre, 1 inch is about 21,000 gallons of water. That, the 1 inch over 1 acre is roughly, and I'm doing that math in my head so I can be off by 1,000 gallons each. But it's about 21,000 gallons of water. 1 inch could take an hour, 1 inch could take 5 minutes, who knows? But if all the properties had to hold a certain amount of water based on the water that could fall on their land, it gets rid of a lot of this problem of where's the water gonna go. It would make the most sense. If you're gonna have commercial do it, why is everybody else? I mean, land is land. If you build on it, you still gotta have someplace for the water to go when it comes down.
There are some communities that require, if you redevelop the property, residential property, put a new house on it, then you do have to maintain that water on site. There's a certain criteria where you have to put a pond on your site. No, but that's going to be, that'd be for the commission to decide whether or not they're getting enough pushback from residents. The price of land alone, do you want to give up 15 or 20% to a pond that's on your site or on your backyard or in your front yard? I think Indian Rocks does it, Reddington does it, has required it. But
Just have it as a workshop to have a discussion as to what direction to go, but it's certainly something that can be done. Yeah, well, you're making, you're kind of making that now, and we can add that to a discussion, if not next month, the following month. Yep. Mhm. Capturing it, right. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. Yep, yes. Yeah.
I think for the most part, the water issues are not raised as tidal source. Coming back up through the storms. I don't think we've got that issue.
yeah, let me add to that.
Not
So
normally.
the criteria, right, if you have a property that's on a seawall, you'd have to provide water quality treatment, right? You'd have to treat that water before you discharge it to the bay. Anything more than that, you wouldn't have the water quantity. You wouldn't have to worry about flooding anybody downstream because you're going to an infinite basin. You're dumping it to the bay. So
But you're saying what's coming from the property is actually plugging the drain, which is causing the stormwater to come back up, causing the tidal water to come back up. So what you need to do is stop the water that's moving rocks and debris and other things going out. You need to slow it down. The way to do that is retain the water that's on land, prevent it from flushing the stuff out into the sea. That's one of your problems. And it's a simple thing, but you gotta think about what's causing it. It's not getting into seriously. Water's moving on the land and pushing it to those fountains. Fountains are getting blocked. So how do you slow down the water on the land to make
Or you could just have the people collect the debris in garbage cans and keep it on their property instead of dumping it in the streets.
And just another afterthought with regard to channeling the water. The same neighbor on one of the two sides that caused my flooding put up a beautiful tin roof. And I thought, why are there no gutters in few of the properties to control? And of course she didn't. And I can see the sheets. There's about 12 inches between your house and the wall, and there's a oil tank between them. But, you know, the new roof just drops sheets of water into my driveway. I'll show you pictures. You won't believe the flooding. Just because at that time, Al, like you said, there were no code mandating direction. They should have channeled all that flood. Their pavers are dry as a bone, and I have to put boots on. But, you know, I would think that putting something around the roofs, mandated or otherwise, gutters would have a little bit of a contribution to running it toward the street or wherever it should go.
So normally on additions, when people put additions on their houses, or when they go up new houses, we require them to put gutters. And we require them to put the gutters either through the seawall or direct them out to the street, not to impact the neighbors. And if it's just a new roof, a lot of times that just, that gets by us,
I was just going to say, going to that as well, either water from off houses or just from like the sunny day flooding. I've noticed too, like going back to what Megan was saying with the mulch, it's like there's certain yard materials that just quite literally float away. Even things that seem heavy, they float in water. So it's like, I don't know if there's room to maybe assist with saying you can have crushed shell and rock and things that aren't going to just float away. Because I know a lot of like these mulches and different yard things they do, it's just like you see them floating down the road, and I'm sure that's contributing a lot.
We have talked about creating an ordinance that, especially after some of the torrential downpours, not allowing those type of materials within the right-of-way or 6 feet, but we've talked about it as far as like planning it. I think there's a couple surrounding cities that don't allow it, so I do have it on my list to look at theirs and then possibly bring it.
Most residents convert over to the stuff that doesn't float away after being there a while, because it gets old to like have to
Right.
keep refilling your
Yeah.
instead. But it would be nice for that, like a heads up for people that are moving in or
Sure.
the new owner.
Definitely.
Set aside things floating away, people dumping stuff. People dumping stuff, that's a problem, that's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter what you do, people are maintaining their lawn, you're not gonna capture everything, and it is going to flood.
Of course.
You slow down the water flow, it helps prevent, it doesn't stop it, but it really helps prevent it.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm coming back to this, but part of the problem is stop flow.
I think you're talking about those baskets that we had looked at, possibly, maybe. I don't remember, but yeah, I can look back through if it's in emails.
My question has to do with retention ponds. If a piece of commercial property, before granting the permit, had to have a retention pond, what responsibility does that owner have to keep that retention pond clean? And two, are they allowed to build over it?
So when a developer comes in or a property owner develops their property, they typically have to get a permit through SwiftMud. SwiftMud monitors and does DEP. Depending on the type of pond, either every 18 months or every 24 months, they have to have an engineer come out and recertify the pond that it's functioning in the way it was originally designed. Decking material is permitted from SwiftMud to be put over ponds, so you'll see people have these dry retention ponds that put decking over a portion of it, as long as the decking allows the water to perk through and it's not directing the water somewhere else.
How do they maintain the pond then?
Usually the decking's over a dry pond where you may have a life cycle of 15, 20 years for that dry pond. They typically don't like you to put decking over if there's an underdrain or if it's a wet pond and you have to get to it for access.
Thank you.
Any other questions? One more, or more to come?
So ultimately, what is a person to do with their water if their neighbor is creating a water problem on their yard? Is it an ordinance, or what do they do to get it remedied?
Good question. Alls I know is it goes to Holden, and it's a code compliant, it becomes a code compliant issue. Let us know, and then,
We will send someone out to take a look, notify the property owners, et cetera. Any other questions?
Just so you know, I've actually seen that work on my block. A neighbor built a carport that drained into the neighbor's yard, and the neighbor's yard, what they call city, and this was about 5, 6 years ago. They made that neighbor take the carport down, because it was, it was like a bullseye from her yard. It was just dredging out her yard. So, that worked.
So we hope to have these types of, we're reinstituting the breakfast with city manager, to have that next month, and then in October have a meeting like this again, and invite your friends and family, but come and watch our meetings on TV live, or certainly information on our website, or if you ever have any questions, comments, please let us know. That's why we're here. Yes.
One last question, Mr. Johnson. Speaking just from Bocas Ciega here, is there anything being done to make sure to improve the backflow valve? So, I don't know, I didn't get the end result.
Yeah, we just cleaned them last week. They'll be cleaned quarterly, and then
Or
I will monitor.
there's a schedule here.
Quarterly, they'll be cleaned, but as far as since we cleaned them, I mean, water has come up to the grade, but I haven't seen any significant flooding like we did.
And it helps, I mean, the rain has been a pest, a couple summers ago, but it helps us because it relays like something's not working. So even though the guys have been out there the day before, if it's not working today, it prompts them to go back out. So, you know, we appreciate the emails that come in.
We are also working on getting a boat, which will help us better get to those outfalls, because it's not always easy to get through yards to be able to get to the pipe. So a boat will help us better maintain our storm drain. That was one of the things that was in all that email chain years ago, was waiting for the tide to get low enough that it was due.
Yeah, well, that doesn't help. That's not going to help, is it?
Just
Sorry.
Just a very quick compliment to our city sanitation workers. I think they're great. They do
Thank you.
a good
Did you?
job. They work hard. I think you need to consider paying them.
Well, we actually are.
They're doing $8 an hour.
Yeah, we're actually proposing to raise that to 18 an hour to start. And then,
Since we've been here 42 years, they do a great job.
thank you. Nope, they do. I see them every day. Literally almost every day. Well, thank you for the comment. Let us know of anything else going forward at any time. This isn't the end of any of these, so please keep us in mind. We're here for all of you. Thank you.
I was gonna say, I can send you.
Yeah, and we'll be sticking around if anybody has any other comments.